Good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, the 17th of July, and I know a lot of people are celebrating Mandela Day, which is tomorrow.
Mhm.
But we are here, SADAG is live for their normal insert, Ask the Expert. And I am joined today by two wonderful ladies, and we are going to be talking today about the misuse of therapy and mental health language in everyday conversations. My name is Tracy Feinstein. I'm the SADAG call center manager, and today I'm joined by Dr. Fakili Smith and Venetia Godan Naratam. Dr. Fakili Smith is an experienced psychologist and executive HR professional with over 15 years in multidisciplinary experiences spanning mental health, organizational culture, and change management. She has her own practice, um, and she certainly has been instrumental in paving the way to support those in need to manage their mental health. And as an independent psychologist, is registered with HPCSA. Dr. Fikili, your time is so valuable, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tracy.
Venetia, I have to say, is part of the SADAG family for many, many years. But her qualifications and her accolades are not only has she given 10 years of volunteering time to the organization that she's passionate about, SADAG, but she studied at UNISA and recently completed her degree to become a registered counselor. She has her own private practice and certainly goes far and beyond to help anybody in need, but also to educate and help people who need the support during a time of crisis. So, ladies, let's get ready for a wonderful Friday afternoon. Um, Such an amazing topic, and thank you so much for making yourself available.
You're welcome, Tracy.
Fantastic. All right. So I hear this for everybody who may or may not know. I'm in the SADC call center. We listen to counselors taking calls. We follow conversations that take place on social media platforms. Um, we have WhatsApp chat lines, so we see people typing messages to us. And I think that we're reaching a stage where there are many times that we really need to clarify and not just assume certain use of vocabulary, language, and sentences that relate to mental well-being. So let's kick off the conversation by putting a little bit more context to the common use of words like trauma, triggered, gaslighting, and toxic. Toxic is a wonderful word at the moment, very descriptive, but may not be appropriate. And these are the words that are coming into the mental health lingo and part of everyday language. Um, I'd love to hear from Dr. Fikili. What is
Thank
your experience? What is your experience of patients or just general society using these words either correctly or incorrectly?
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Being in the mental health space for so many years, I've seen the shift. Initially, we were at a space where we were encouraging awareness. It's all good and well currently that we're seeing this wave. People are becoming awakened to mental health, but then obviously it also comes with its own teething problems. So the use of terms such as trauma, triggered, gaslighting, toxic has entered our everyday language, mainly because of the mental health awareness, social media amplification, and what psychologists refer to as concept creep, the broadening of clinical definitions into more casual context. This
Mm,
shift has assisted towards the reduction of stigma. It's left people empowered, but it also comes with its own risk. And one of the risks that comes with the careless use of clinical terms is that it dilutes precision. and it can
mm,
lead to the misuse of these sensitive terms. As much as
mm,
we benefited from it, we've reduced the stigma significantly, we've improved communication, and it has also assisted towards fostering empathy. But we're seeing a lot of dilution in the meaning, and in most instances, in social spaces, it's used as a weapon to pathologize mental health care users. And
mm,
that has led to a lot of diagnostic confusion because it blurs out the distinction between, for instance, a person who's just dealing with stress and a person who is now depressed. So often people are saying, I'm traumatized, and you follow up and you're like thinking it's a serious thing, but a person is just referring to a failed exam.
mm.
Yeah.
I know
I
Venetia's going
think,
to want to jump in there.
you know,
She's like, her brain is spinning. But
I
share your
always
thoughts.
I always have something to say. Everybody knows this. I love my own voice. No, but as you were talking, doctor, it's just you are so right, right? When you say it almost diminishes the experience or the the and I say experience, right? Because I don't want to like over complicate it, but it diminishes the experience of the person who actually has, for example, depression, who is
Mhm.
actually diagnosed with depression, who is actually diagnosed with anxiety, actually diagnosed with panic. It almost dilutes and diminishes the seriousness and the difficulties that they might experience on the quality of their lives, on how they, have to manage it on a day-to-day basis, the struggles that they might actually like be, sort of managing at every step of their day. And the thing is that, yes, social media is, and you're right, awareness is wonderful. It's so important to talk around mental health so that we can see the signs, so we can be aware and we can reach out for help. We can get help for our loved ones if we notice that they're struggling. But where does that line where is the line, and how do we not almost absorb the concept of, I'm sad, I'm down. And you're right. I love that you use the word stressed, right? Because we have to start with stress. Because stress is almost like how do we as a normal, and I say normal, but I mean average person, right, deal with stress? The ability, the capacity, the capability, the support that we have, all of that influences the way we manage stress. And then obviously, if there's no support, if there's no environment, if there's no understanding, if there's difficulty in routine and, life that happens, then that might lead to more serious impact to your psychological
Mm,
health.
mm,
So I think,
mm,
I mean, you're so right in everything that you said, and my brain was actually whirling like it was.
mm,
I can
mm.
tell you.
Yeah. I want to pick up and focus on that word sort of trauma in relation to kind of everyday life. Life is difficult, especially in South Africa. And there are unique situations. And it's life is hard, but difficult situations can be traumatic. And it probably alludes to kind of what you were saying at the moment, Venetia, like, where do you draw the line in the sand between what is traumatic for me or for you and even for Dr. Fikile? But like when we are talking about learning how to express our feelings, or maybe start the process of getting help for trauma. What do we do? What should we be saying to people about learning how to verbalize those emotions? Um, I'm one of those as well who I have to say I love to watch some of the Dr. Phil episodes. And he is that person who constantly says, and it's something that sticks in my head, words are powerful. And so I think when we may have these thoughts and we're talking about these kind of like diminishing or diluting words because trauma is real.
Yeah.
Um, but when we say it in the wrong context, it dilutes it. And I think so, how would you, when you were getting a person into therapy, what would you do to kind of allow them to rather verbalize their emotions and their feelings correctly? Do you correct them when saying that's not trauma? Or what do you do?
Okay, yeah, I've kind of had to become strict with vocabulary because
Mm,
it can get a lot diluted and it can lead to a lot of misunderstanding. Because I always say with issues of psych, I cannot see what you're going through unless you describe it to me in a way that I can understand. So
mm,
when it comes to trauma, for me, the emphasis is on the impact that the event has had as opposed to the event itself. So to me, I always say trauma leaves a lasting overburdening of the mental and emotional processing, which is caused by the exposure to the extreme events. And back in the day, we used to refer to trauma, for us that are old, as violence, abuse, war, and accident.
mm,
But
mm,
nowadays, it's used so carelessly. I always cautioned respectfully to say, look, let's focus rather on the effects that it's had on you without minimizing how a person is feeling. So there are day-to-day stressors that are painful, overwhelming, such as losing a job. But if they do not challenge um, if they do not overwhelm your nervous system, if they do not leave a lasting effect on your sense of safety, identity, and your worldview, then it cannot be classified as trauma. Trauma can lead to extreme symptoms such as hypervigilance, flashbacks, and emotional numbing, to name just a few. So people typically dealing with trauma in therapy, they're very difficult to work with because it's one of those conditions that are very difficult to treat.
mm,
So those are words that we cannot use lightly when dealing or going through things that we can recover from in time or with support or resilience. When coming to trauma, it's things that despite the level of support, the time that's passed ever since you've been exposed to the incident, you still feel like it happened yesterday.
mm,
So, yeah.
mm.
Mm.
I love the way you've packaged that. And Venetia, I'm thinking of, you're very familiar with the call center and the SADAG service that gets offered. But this it talks to the fact that it is so important for counselors, even telephonic, to start a safe place for people to start to verbalize those emotions. Do you want to
Mm.
pick up on that?
Absolutely. And I think that I like the idea of the safe space, right? It's so important for every single person to have a safe space where they can share their experience, share the exactly what Doctor said, the impact, right? To share what I'm actually experiencing right now. I think if I have to talk about like the word trauma and exactly what Doctor said, is just a lot of people seem to be now. It's when you say, like, the loss of a job, but with a loss of a job, yes, you grieve your job. Yes, it's stressful. Yes, it's overwhelming. We're not taking away that it's serious and can actually, cause you quite a significant amount of stress. But what are your actions going forward? And those are doable, they're actionable. Exactly what you said, with resilience and with a plan and with routine, that you can actually change that, right?
Mm. Mm.
Unlike, and I say unlike, but obviously every single person is unique, every situation is nuanced. Unlike a person that might have been in an accident, as you mentioned, in like a serious car accident, and they've had significant physical injuries, and this has now caused a significant change in the quality of their life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think you're very right in sort of distinguishing that too. So I really, really like that. I think, when we're talking, like Tracy, when you mentioned with regards to counselors and people speaking on the phone, I think it's so important to also allow people to understand and validate maybe, yes, losing a job, ending a relationship can be stressful. It is stressful. It is a loss. It is a form of grieving in a sense, right? But what can you do from here? And I think, that's where that solution focus also comes in, where registered counselors come in as solution focused. Okay, what can we practically do in short term to manage your experience right now?
Mm. And I think that it's also incumbent on individuals for us to look at different uses of language and, in particular, vocabulary to express the same emotions but try and say it differently. And I want to pick up on the conversation where we talk about the difference in culture, in age, gender, um, and the influences that are assigned to those different categories when we are trying to communicate. And I go back to what you said earlier, Dr. Fikele. We spoke about trauma in history with wars, okay? Whereas
Yeah.
now you can have a traumatic experience because your water gets cut off on the day before you go about to have a massive big wedding, okay? Like how do you balance these things on the scale? But it's incredible how life has changed. And I'd like to pick up on the conversation in that we are dealing with different generations. And while we're trying to debunk the myths around mental health, it becomes incredibly important for us to be able to verbalize these words in the correct category. So, what about the word toxic? We've spoken a lot about trauma. What about the word toxic when we're looking at different generations?
Thank you, Tracy. I've picked up that the younger generation has adopted the word toxic. Um, what I've observed in practice is that females tend to use toxic in relation to relational settings.
Okay. Okay.
So they refer to things like I'm in a toxic relationship, and it's more from a place of seeking empathy in them expressing it that way, for the therapist perhaps to be empathetic with them. So it's mostly relational. Whereas when it comes to males, males are often direct. Females are more relational. So males will say things as they are. Females will be like toxic. And when you try to dig deep into the relationship, you realize that maybe poor communication has been described now as toxicity. I find that every day I will hear that word at least 100 times.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the gender, like I said, females more likely to use it in a relational context. And with the age, the younger generation is using the word much more. And I think we can attribute that to the exposure to social media. If you compare the new generation as opposed to the older generation, there was less use of that vocabulary. So you can see that it's a term that is now being used more frequently. It's in style. And when you look at people that are actually living with mental illness, their expression is mostly direct and focused and on their lived experience, as opposed to a person who doesn't know what toxicity is and they just use it casually because they do not know the significant impact of the terms that they are using. And also, when you look at the culture is constantly evolving. As much as in the African space, we were mostly concerned about community, carrying trauma as a community. But we are seeing that we are starting to adopt the European way of doing things, where things are slowly becoming personal and psychological as opposed to carrying pain as a community.
Mm.
So time has contributed largely and culture has contributed largely to our vocabulary. And most of these things are influenced by what we are seeing every day of our lives.
Exactly. And I want to pick up on that, Van, for you to kind of say, what is the role that social media is playing? Because so many people appear to be getting this language off of social media. And when we're talking about the younger generation, perhaps the actual understanding of the correct use of the term is not there.
Mm.
I that no, carry on. I love to listen.
It's okay, sorry. Sorry. I'm saying it's picked up from there, and without taking the time really to analyze the definitions and understand what you're saying, because a friend is using this term, oh, might as well adopt it because it sounds cool. And I find that when you use these intense terms, people pay attention. And I think that is
Correct.
what's indirectly rewarding this behavior, and hence we're seeing it's being used more and more.
Mm, yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. And I think, Doctor, you're so right that it's being used so, and I want to use the word vague, is that because it's not understood what toxic can actually and how it can impact your life. How a toxic relationship, and I say toxic in its real terms, how a toxic relationship can impact the quality of your life. That now it's being used extremely in a very vague overtone.
Mm,
Like it's just like, oh, this person might not have met my expectations. I'm
Mm.
not willing to maybe, and it's just the analogy, right? I'm not
Yeah.
willing to maybe take accountability for my own actions
Mm. Yeah.
because maybe I'm not able to take accountability for my actions, or I don't want to be perceived as wrong. So I'm going to automatically say that this relationship or this person or this action or even this company is toxic,
mm. So
right?
we sort of put an umbrella of the word toxic over it, but we're not really looking at the actual actions for the people
Exactly that.
involved. And
Yes.
Absolutely. So then
yeah,
you come to accountability. Like, I mean, in a lot of the sessions that I have with clients, I say accountability is very important. We
mm,
also have to look at our part in certain things, right? When we come to when we're in a relationship, it does take two people, right? There are, as you mentioned, doctor, you said miscommunication also, not understanding what the other person expects, not being aware at where our level of compromise is, and then just labeling it. And I use the word label, but just labeling this relationship as now being toxic because it doesn't
mm,
meet our need or our expectation. And that can
mm,
also
mm,
be one of the ways that people use it, I think, now.
mm,
But no, you're right. Just for people to take the time and just unpack feelings using the correct vocabulary. Because in some instances, your partner may do something and you immediately, instead of taking the time to understand and unpack what they're trying to say, you assume you're being toxic. But what does that even mean? So at times we don't
Absolutely.
take the time to get to know the people around us from where they come from.
mm, mm.
Mm.
Absolutely. And that looks at intention, right? That if we're
Yes,
not aware of intention, then how are we labeling this?
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so, this comes to really why we're also having today's conversation is that
Mm.
we need to really be wise with our words. We need to think before we open our mouth.
Mm.
Um, and I think especially when we are doing so much in the space of mental health, to number
Mm.
one, debunk the myths, break down the stigma, and to
Mm.
educate, it's critically important to use the right words.
Mm.
And so the encouragement today, I gather, is like, maybe go and read the definition of some of the words that we're really talking about and challenge yourself. For those people listening out there today, challenge yourself to go to a dictionary, go onto to Google and find other more descriptive words which may mean in your world the same as these words we're talking about today. And we've just spoken about two at the moment with trauma and toxic. But find other words to really express your own feelings. And I think it would be great if we could look at a question that says, looking at the bigger picture, what are the real risks of misusing mental health language? Not only for the individuals, but a society as a whole. And the first thing that comes to my mind is I remember back in the days how easily we use the word stress. And it's almost like stress now has a diagnosis. It really has a very structured category. But now we're going on to these other words. So what do we need to do? How do we communicate the use of these emotions differently to society as a whole? Anybody?
Yeah, okay. So I'll start here. I think, and I've said this all the time, I'm sure Tracy will remember, is that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Make yourself aware, because remember, especially when we're talking about social media and the availability of information, right? We have like abundance of availability of information now. It's literally at our fingertips or at our voice tip, right? We can talk to our devices. I mean, that's intense. We don't even have to type anymore. That's the level of action that we have to do. So I think knowledge is definitely power. I think if you, especially the younger generation, I believe, is that you are setting the tone. And I think if you are in the position, and not only younger people, but people that are talking to others, right? You are setting the tone of understanding. So if you are saying something, make sure that you are saying it in the correct terms. You are making sure that you're sharing information that's concise. And I'm not negating a person sharing their experience. Absolutely. Please share your experience. But know that each and every person's experience, ability, capability, awareness, everything is unique. All of these things that I've mentioned, all of the items are all unique to each and every individual. None of us experience the same experience in the same way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect the quality of our lives in the same way. So knowledge is definitely power. Please, if you are, and I, sometimes when I watch things, I think to myself, if only this person read what this really means, I would be so grateful that they're sharing the experience. But just do a little bit of research. Let's just look up what we're influencing and how we're influencing it.
Yeah.
I agree with you so much, Benisha. You're so right. Because it takes us to the foundations to say, school yourself. We have so much access to information in our generation. Learn your vocabulary before you say things. Go to the definitions and define them and be clear about what you're saying. Don't take anything for granted, because as I was preparing for today, I realized that we can use words carelessly or terms carelessly. And there's a difference really with when it comes to vocabulary, when you're going to mention you name your core emotions as opposed to the nouns terms. Because oftentimes people carelessly say, okay, I am feeling overwhelmed, forgetting that that is a noun term. So as opposed to saying that, why don't you rather say, I feel sad or I feel anxious, basic core emotions
Basic.
like that.
Nervous.
Nervous.
I'm nervous.
Yes.
I'm nervous before I write an exam. It's not that I have
Yes.
anxiety before I write an exam. I
Yes.
am nervous. And it's a natural thing, right? We are supposed to feel nervous before you write an exam. You don't know what the exam has in it.
Exactly.
Mm, mm,
So, and also understanding the difference between what you are feeling and what you are thinking. For instance, there's a difference between saying, I feel sad, or thinking, or saying, no one cares. When we say
mm.
no one cares, it's not a feeling, it's a thought, so basic
Yes,
things like that.
yes,
So it's
yes.
really for us as professionals to school the people that we come across on a daily basis and taking it to the
Mm.
foundations.
Yeah.
Mm.
Those are such wise words and such practical examples. And I think it also it leans into a lot of what SADAG tries to do to educate and support anybody reaching out for their mental well-being. Is it even starts, when you start journaling, how do you feel? Um, and that's a really good time to test yourself. Am I writing the right word down? Okay. Um, and so there are many different ways that people can learn to use the terms correctly. And what my takeaway from today is, let's not dilute the
Yeah.
severity of the correct words to manage mental illness, because mental illness is real and we need to respect those terms. But we need to get a little bit more creative and not so lazy, but just using the words just because it's the modern social fad at the moment.
Yeah.
Man is going, yes, I need to say
Yes,
something. Yes.
lazy. That's what it is. In my sessions, I actually have, like, the feelings wheel, and I
Yes.
like to
Yes, I
keep it
like
there.
that.
I love
Mm,
it because it actually makes us so aware of what is this feeling that we're feeling. It's not just anxiety. It's not just I'm panicking today. It's not just that I'm depressed.
mm,
And it's a topic for another conversation. But when people assume and say, "Oh, this person is so bipolar," I hate
mm,
that.
mm,
Oh my God,
mm.
that one really
Yeah.
irks me, like from my, like my insides a little bit. But I think we use it so easily because it's just everywhere. And you're right,
Yeah.
it doesn't, mental illness is severe. It needs help, it needs support, it needs medication at times, it needs long-term therapy, it needs a lot of help.
Mm.
Mm.
And
You're
so we
right.
need to respect it. Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
I agree. I
So,
agree.
ladies, believe it or not, we actually are coming to the end of our session. And I
Oh,
think we've hardly even like done a tip of the iceberg. So we're going to have to come back
you
on
have,
another Friday for session two.
yeah.
Um, but I think the most important takeaway is that we've started the conversation. And exactly like it's very easy to listen and see on social media the wrong use of some of the language we've been referring to today. Um, the message of today is listen carefully, you
Mm,
choose the right words, and then
mm,
challenge yourself to start maybe doing a little bit of research. Venetia put it very plainly. Do a little bit of research because it's very easy to repeat what we think may be a good description.
mm.
Um, so, Dr. Fikile, I'm going to give you an opportunity in a few seconds. What would you share today as like closing words of hope for anybody listening and actually really does connect with what we're trying to say?
Mm. Thank you, Tracy. My words of wisdom for today's session is that language shapes our reality. If mental health vocabulary is distorted, society risks building a culture where suffering is trivialized or sensationalized. Both extremes harm progress. Trivialization silences those in need. Sensationalization breeds fear and misinformation. So be mindful with every word that leaves your mouth. Be careful how it affects the next person. And you can make a difference. I can make a difference. Together we will win this battle.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Venetia, your words of wisdom from today.
I think Dr. Fikile just said it all in such a beautiful manner. all I'd like to add is that if you are not sure about the words that you're using, and if you're not sure about the experience or the emotion that you're feeling, reach out, speak to a professional, speak to a counselor at SADAG, unpack it before you also label yourself based on others or label others based on what you're noticing, because every emotion is also situational. So I think just look out for that.
I love that.
Love it
As
too.
I said, everybody, that kind of means that it's a wrap for Friday afternoon. What I do want to say to anybody listening and going on the SADAG platforms, often what you want to do is find what is a reputable website? Where can I know the information that I'm getting or that I'm reading is reliable and what will be helpful? And the one place you can go to is the SADAG website, www.sadag.org. Filled with information. There are also contact details. And if you feel like you would like to have a conversation, if some of the words and the situations that we spoke about today have resonated and are impacting on your life, you don't need to do this alone. Phone a SADAG counselor, get in touch with us on a phone call, on a WhatsApp message, and let us help you. And let us all make a difference to make mental health matter and use the right language. Ladies, thank you for your time today. It was wonderful being together, just not enough time. Have a great weekend, and thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Fanisha.
Thank
Bye.
you.